From early on, citizens in built-up areas became all too used to the eerie howl of the air raid siren. At one girls' school in Birkenhead, the sound of the siren meant just one thing: running to their very own air raid shelter. I've come to meet present-day school caretaker Trevor Perry for a tour of this unusual reminder of how the Blitz became a part of normal everyday life for so many thousands of people in Liverpool.
Wow, yeah. This has got the atmosphere.
It certainly does.
The bunker was paid for and constructed by the students' parents after the outbreak of war in 1939. It meant the girls could continue to live and study in Birkenhead rather than being evacuated to the countryside.
So presumably these rows of benches is where the kids would have been sitting?
Exactly so. There were about 222 kids on the roll in 1940 when the shelters were opened. So it would have been quite cosy down here. The kids would sit along these benches.
But the school would try and keep some kind of semblance of the normal routine?
Yes, they would try to do lessons down here to take the girls' minds off the fact that there was bombing going on.
Must have been a pretty terrifying experience.
That's right, yes. They would have been able to hear the aerial battles going on, they would have been able to hear bombs going off, and buildings being demolished. It would have been a fairly horrible sort of environment to be in.
With over 200 children using this shelter at any one time, they had to rely on some somewhat basic facilities.
Well, what looks like two cupboards.
Yes, behind these doors are the fairly rudimentary toilet facilities that we have here.
Rudimentary to say the very least, yes. Yeah, it must have added quite a sort of piquancy to the atmosphere down here.
Yeah, it would have been stuffy and airless down here anyway, and that would have just added a certain extra something.
Now this shelter wasn't hit directly, very fortunately, but that wasn't the case with all the shelters in Merseyside.
One of the worst tragedies took place at the Durning Road shelter in Edge Hill. Here, on the 29th of November 1940, over 300 people were trapped as a parachute mine caused a neighbouring building to collapse on top of the shelter. While many suffocated, others were burnt alive by scalding water and steam that escaped from a damaged furnace. Winston Churchill called it the worst single civilian incident of the entire war.
Aha, I see a ladder.
Luckily for the girls at Birkenhead, if their main entrance ever collapsed, they had a backup plan.
Fresh air. Come on, let's get out of here.
Footage recorded at the time shows that practicing an emergency exit through this roof hatch was part of the girls' regular air raid drill.
It's a tight old squeeze, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is.
And it's kind of surreal, obviously coming out of here into this beautiful modern school. A very different experience to coming out of there in the 1940s.
Exactly, because when they came out of there in the 1940s, they may well have found that there were buildings that were standing when they went into the shelters that had been demolished by bombs in the meantime, and there might be destruction all around.